Lightning split the sky as Delphine Ashworth pressed herself against the rocky outcropping, her heart hammering against her ribs. The Apache warrior's blood seeped through her torn petticoat, the makeshift bandage already crimson-soaked. His fever burned through her fingertips as she cradled his head, watching the deadly funnel cloud tear across the New Mexico territory like God's own wrath. "You shouldn't have come back for me," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. His obsidian eyes flickered open, fixing on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "White women don't risk their lives for Apache dogs. This white woman does," Delphine shot back, tightening her grip on his shoulders as debris flew past their shelter. She'd been heading to Santa Rosa when the twister struck, but when she'd seen him thrown from his horse, something primal had overridden every lesson about staying away from his kind. Now, with death circling them like a hungry vulture, she wondered if her compassion would be their doom. The warrior who'd introduced himself only as Kestrel studied her with those penetrating dark eyes. "Why?" The single word carried the weight of centuries of mistrust. "Because you're hurt," she said simply, pressing her hand against the gash on his temple where a flying branch had struck him. "Because it's right." Thunder crashed overhead, and Kestrel's hand found hers. His palm was calloused from years of riding and fighting, yet his touch was surprisingly gentle. "My people call me Akechidet. It means warrior. But my birth name—" He paused, pain flickering across his angular features. "My birth name is something I buried long ago." Delphine felt the strange pull she'd been fighting since first seeing him, this man who moved like liquid shadow, whose very presence seemed to command the wind itself. There was something noble about his bearing, something that spoke of leadership and power beyond what a simple warrior should possess. "Tell me," she urged, using her skirts to shield his face from the driving rain. "When this storm passes, when you see who I truly am, you'll wish you'd left me to die." His fingers traced her cheek with reverent disbelief. "You have hair like spun gold and eyes the color of prairie sage. You're not meant for this harsh land, yet here you are, bleeding for a stranger." The tornado's roar began to fade, but Delphine barely noticed. This man, this warrior who spoke with the cadence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, was looking at her, as if she were something precious beyond measure. Her practical mind warned her away, but her heart was already lost. "I'm meant to be exactly where I am," she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As the storm finally passed, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake, neither of them moved from their shelter. Delphine sensed that once they emerged, everything would change. The blood on her hands, the trust in his eyes, this moment of perfect understanding, it would all be tested by the harsh realities of a world that forbade what was already blooming between them. 3 days had passed since the storm, and Delphine found herself deeper in Apache territory than any white woman should dare venture. Akecheta's wounds were healing, but he'd grown increasingly agitated as they traveled toward his homeland. She'd abandoned her journey to Santa Rosa without a second thought, drawn by something she couldn't name. "You should go back," he said for the 100th time as they made camp beside a hidden spring. "Once we reach my village, there will be no protecting you from what you'll discover." "Stop trying to frighten me away," Delphine replied, wringing out her torn stockings in the moonlit water. "I've seen you mumble in your sleep, calling out orders like someone accustomed to command. You're no ordinary warrior, are you?" Akecheta's jaw tightened. "What I am will only bring you pain." But when war cries echoed from the canyon below, everything changed. A dozen Apache warriors thundered into view, their horses lathered with foam, arrows nocked and ready. Delphine instinctively moved toward Akecheta, but he stepped forward instead, his entire bearing transforming. "Enough." The single word cracked like a whip through the night air. The warriors immediately reined in their mounts, and Delphine's Blood turned to ice water. She recognized the deference in their postures, the way they averted their eyes while still maintaining warrior pride. This wasn't how followers treated an equal. The lead warrior, scarred and grizzled, slid from his horse and approached with reverence that made Delphine's stomach drop. "Great Chief, we've been searching for you." "When the storm, speak English." "Nalnish," Akecheta commanded quietly, his eyes never leaving Delphine's face. "She deserves to understand." "Chief," the word hit Delphine like a physical blow. Not just any chief, the way these hardened warriors looked at him spoke of something far more significant. She thought of every story she'd heard about Apache raids, every warning about their ruthless leader who'd united the scattered tribes. "You're him," she whispered, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. "You're Akecheta Nalani, the Ghost Chief, the one they say can summon storms and disappear like smoke." His real name hung between them like a blade. Akecheta Nalani, the most feared Apache leader in all the territories, the man whose very mention made grown men reach for their guns. The warrior who'd been fighting a bloody war against everything she represented. "Now you understand why you should run," he said softly. But his eyes held desperate hope that she wouldn't. Delphine looked at this man who'd been gentle with her broken spirit, who'd shared his water and protected her from his own people's suspicion. The fearsome ghost chief her people whispered about in terror was the same man who'd touched her face with reverent wonder. "I understand that I'm falling in love with the enemy," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And that apparently doesn't matter as much as it should." The warriors exchanged glances full of meaning she couldn't interpret, but Akecheta stepped closer, his hand finding hers despite the audience. "Love is a luxury we cannot afford, golden one. My warpath is soaked in the blood of your people." "Then we'll forge a new path," Delphine said, surprising herself with her fierce determination. "One that doesn't require more bloodshed." For the first time since the storm, Akecheta smiled a real smile that transformed his entire face. "You would try to tame the wind itself. Watch me." The Apache stronghold carved into Red Canyon walls took Delphine's breath away, not just its savage beauty, but the obvious prosperity and organization. This wasn't the ragged band of raiders she'd been told about. Gardens flourished in hidden valleys, children played safely, and the people moved with purpose and pride. "Welcome to Cocopelli's Canyon," Akecheta said as they rode through the narrow entrance. "My grandfather chose this place because the spirits blessed it with water and safety." Delphine noticed how everyone stopped to watch their arrival, not with hostility, but with curious respect for their chief and wary interest in her. Women whispered behind their hands while children peeked out from behind cooking fires. She was clearly the first white woman to enter this sanctuary. An elderly woman approached with regal bearing, her silver hair braided with turquoise and her dark eyes sharp as obsidian blades. "So this is the one who saved our war chief from the angry spirits," she said in accented English. "I am Ayana, keeper of our laws and grandmother to this stubborn boy." "Grandmother," Akecheta warned, but there was affection in his voice. Ayana ignored him, studying Delphine with uncomfortable intensity. "You have strong medicine, white girl, but love between our peoples has always ended in tears and graves." That evening, as Delphine sat beside the central fire sharing a meal of roasted rabbit and wild onions, she began to understand the weight of what Akecheta carried. Warriors approached him constantly reporting on army movements, seeking permission for raids, asking for judgment in disputes. He was more than a war chief. He was the beating heart of his people's survival. "Tell me about the war," Delphine said when they'd found privacy on a cliff overlooking the moonlit canyon. Akecheta was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with old pain. "My father was a peace chief. He believed your people and mine could share this land. When I was 12 summers old, I watched soldiers murder him under a flag of truce. Delphine's heart clenched, but she remained silent, sensing there was more. They killed my mother, too, and my little sister Ciala. She was only 7. His hands clenched into fists. I became war chief that day, swearing to avenge every drop of Apache blood spilled by white greed. And now? Delphine asked softly, covering his fist with her hand. Now I'm caught between the oath I swore on my family's graves and this impossible thing growing between us. He turned to face her, his eyes reflecting starlight. You make me want to believe in peace again, but my people need a warrior, not a dreamer. Maybe they need both, Delphine suggested. Maybe that's why the storm brought us together. Before Akecheta could respond, urgent shouts echoed from below. A scout had arrived, his horse foam-flecked from a hard ride. Delphine watched her warrior transform back into the ghost chief, his face hardening into a mask of lethal purpose. What news, Kitchi? Akecheta demanded. Colonel Morrison moves against us at dawn, the scout gasped. 500 soldiers with artillery. Someone told him about the hidden trail. The blood drained from Delphine's face. Morrison, she knew that name. Her own uncle, the man who'd raised her after her parents died. The man who'd been hunting Akecheta for 3 years. Delphine? Akecheta's voice was sharp with growing suspicion. What do you know of this colonel? She met his eyes, knowing her next words would either damn them or save them all. He's my uncle, and if he's coming for you, it's because he believes. You're holding me captive. The silence that followed Delphine's revelation was deafening. Every Apache within hearing distance turned toward them, hands drifting to weapons as the implications sank in. Akecheta's face had gone stone cold, the tender lover replaced by the merciless war chief who'd terrorized the territory for years. Your uncle, he repeated, each word sharp as a blade. The butcher of Painted Horse Creek, the man who orders the killing of Apache children. Delphine's stomach twisted. She'd heard whispers about Painted Horse Creek, but Uncle Cornelius had always claimed it was a military necessity, hostile warriors using children as shields. Now, seeing the raw pain in Akecheta's eyes, she wondered what other lies she'd been fed. You need to evacuate the canyon, she said urgently. Morrison doesn't take prisoners, and he won't negotiate. If he thinks I'm here against my will, aren't you? The question came from Nalnish, his scarred face twisted with suspicion. What loyal niece wouldn't betray her captor to save her own people? That's enough, Akecheta commanded, but doubt had crept into his voice. Delphine risked her life to save mine. During a convenient storm that kept her from reaching Santa Rosa, Nalnish pressed, where she was supposed to meet with territorial officials about new settlements. Tell me, white woman, what were those meetings really about? Delphine felt the trap closing around her. The meetings had been about surveying Apache lands for potential rail routes, but admitting that would only confirm their suspicions. Yet lying now would destroy any chance of saving the people she'd grown to care about. I was going to survey your lands, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, for the railroad. But that was before you seduced our chief into betraying his own people. Ayana's voice cut like ice. The old woman's eyes blazed with fury and disappointment. I felt the spirits warning against you, but my grandson's heart made him deaf to wisdom. Akecheta staggered as if struck. The betrayal in his eyes was worse than any physical wound. Everything between us, was it all a lie to keep me distracted while your uncle positioned his troops? No, Delphine reached for him, but he pulled away as if her touch burned. I chose you over my own mission, over my own people. I love you. Love, he spat. White people's lies wrapped in pretty words. He turned to address his warriors. Double the sentries. Move the children to the deep caves. If we must fight, we'll make Morrison pay for every Apache life with 10 of his own." "There's another way," Delphine said desperately. "Let me go to him. I can convince him I was never in danger, that I came here willingly. If he believes you never harmed me, the white spy offers to save us," Nalnish sneered. "How generous." "But—" Ayana stepped forward, studying Delphine with those piercing eyes. "You would walk into the guns of your own people to protect ours?" "Yes." Delphine's answer came without hesitation. "Even if it means I never see any of you again. Even if—" She looked at Akacheta, her heart breaking at the cold distance in his face. "Even if he'll never forgive me for what I was before I met him." The old woman nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is truth in your heart after all. But trust, once broken, heals slowly if it heals at all." As dawn approached, Delphine prepared for what might be her final act of love. She would walk down that canyon trail into her uncle's guns, knowing that even if she saved Akacheta's people, she would lose him forever. The man who'd shown her a love fierce and pure as wildfire would never again look at her with anything but suspicion. "If I don't survive this," she told him as the eastern sky began to lighten, "know that loving you was the most real thing I've ever done." Akecheta's jaw worked, emotions warring in his dark eyes. "If you betray us now, I won't," Delphine promised. "But if your people survive because of what I'm about to do, remember that some bridges can be rebuilt even after they've been burned." Delphine walked down the canyon trail with her hands raised, her white petticoat serving as a flag of truce in the gray dawn light. Behind her, she could feel Akacheta's warriors positioned along the cliff tops, their rifles trained on the approaching blue column. Her uncle's cavalry had arrived with mathematical precision, just as he'd been taught at West Point. Colonel Cornelius Morrison sat his horse like a monument to military efficiency, his steel-gray mustache perfectly waxed despite 3 days of hard riding. When he spotted her emerging from the canyon, relief and fury warred across his weathered features. "Delphine!" He spurred his mount forward, dismounting to catch her in a bone-crushing embrace. "Thank God you're alive." When the stage driver said, "You disappeared during the storm, we thought those savages had taken you." "Uncle Cornelius," she began carefully, acutely aware that hidden Apache eyes watched every gesture, "I need you to listen very carefully. I was never a prisoner. I chose to come here." Morrison's face darkened. "Chose? Girl, they've clearly addled your wits with their heathen magic. No Christian woman would willingly consort with Apache murderers." "Lower your voice," Delphine hissed, glancing at the canyon walls. "There are children hidden in those rocks. Innocent people who've done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" Morrison's laugh was harsh. "Tell that to the families butchered at Willow Creek. Tell that to the settlers scalped along the Pecos River. That devil chief of theirs has blood on his hands that won't wash clean." Delphine felt a chill of recognition. She'd heard different stories about those raids from the Apache perspective tales of soldiers burning villages, of families driven from ancestral lands by broken treaties. What if those raids were retaliation? What if there's more to this war than we've been told? Retaliation for what? For bringing civilization to this godless wilderness? Morrison's voice carried the absolute certainty of a man who'd never questioned his righteousness. "I've spent 3 years hunting Akacheta Nalani, and today I finally have him trapped. You don't understand, he saved my life. During the tornado, he could have left me to die, but he didn't. These people aren't the monsters we've been told about." Morrison studied her with growing alarm. "Sweet Jesus, they have corrupted you. No matter once we've cleaned out this nest of vipers, you'll come to your senses. If you attack this canyon, innocent blood will be spilled," Delphine said urgently. "Children, elders, mothers with babes, is that the kind of victory you want?" Sometimes the sword of justice cuts broadly, Morrison replied with cold finality. Stand aside, niece. You've been through an ordeal, but it ends now. A rifle shot cracked from the canyon walls, and Morrison's hat flew from his head. Every soldier's weapon swung toward the hidden Apache positions, but Morrison raised his hand for restraint. His eyes had gone hard as flint. A warning shot, Colonel, Akecheta's voice echoed from the rocks above. Your niece speaks truth. She came here by her own choice, and she leaves the same way. The ghost chief himself, Morrison breathed, his hand moving to his sidearm. Show yourself, you coward. Face me like a man. Uncle, please, Delphine begged. There's been enough killing. Enough hatred. But she could see in Morrison's eyes the same look she'd witnessed in some of the Apache warriors, the weight of too much blood, too many losses, too many years of treating enemies as less than human. The war had poisoned them all. I'll give you one chance to surrender, Morrison called out. Send down your weapons and come peacefully, and I promise the women and children won't be harmed. Promises from the man who burned Painted Horse Creek? Akecheta's reply carried bitter laughter. Your word is worth less than dust, soldier. Morrison's face flushed red. That village was harboring raiders. I did what was necessary. You murdered children in their beds, came the savage response. My cousin's daughter among them. She was 5 years old. The truth hit Delphine like a physical blow. She saw her uncle as if for the first time, not the noble officer who'd raised her, but a man who'd convinced himself that atrocity was duty, just as Akecheta had convinced himself that vengeance was justice. You're both wrong, she called out, her voice carrying to both sides. Uncle Cornelius, what you did at Painted Horse Creek was murder, not military necessity. And Akecheta, the innocent people you've killed in your raids had nothing to do with your family's deaths. The canyon fell silent except for the whisper of wind through stone. She stood between two armies, between two men she loved in different ways, knowing that her next words would either prevent a massacre or trigger one. You've both been fighting the wrong war, Delphine continued, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. Uncle Cornelius, you've been protecting settlers by creating more enemies. Akecheta, you've been avenging your family by destroying other families. When does it end? Morrison's jaw worked furiously. Delphine, you don't understand the complexities. I understand that you taught me about honor and justice. Then I watched you prepare to slaughter children to capture one man. Her words cut deep, and she saw her uncle flinch. What would my father say about the man you've become? The mention of Morrison's dead brother Delphine's father struck home. The colonel's rigid posture sagged slightly. Your father never had to face hostile savages bent on murdering innocent settlers. My father would never have burned a village full of children, Delphine replied quietly. And you know it. From above came Akecheta's voice, softer now but still wary. What do you propose, Golden One? That we simply forget the blood between our peoples? I propose that you both prove you're better men than this war has made you. Delphine looked up toward the hidden Apache positions, then back at her uncle. Cornelius, take your men and ride away. Give me your word that you'll leave this canyon in peace. Absolutely not. My duty, your duty is to protect innocent lives, not take them. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. You know in your heart that attacking this stronghold will mean killing women and children. Is that the legacy you want? Is that what Father would have wanted? Morrison's weathered face crumpled slightly. In that moment, he looked every one of his 57 years. They've raided our settlements, Delphine. Good people have died. And good people will keep dying until someone chooses to break the cycle. She touched his arm gently. Let it be you. Be the man my father believed you were. A long moment passed before Morrison lifted his eyes toward the canyon walls. Chief Nalani, Your woman speaks of ending bloodshed. What guarantee do I have that? You won't continue your war? Akecheta emerged from the rocks, moving with fluid grace down the treacherous path. He kept his rifle lowered but ready, his dark eyes fixed on Morrison with predatory intensity. When he reached the canyon floor, the two men faced each other, representatives of peoples who'd been killing each other for generations. No more raids on settlements, Akecheta said finally. But if soldiers attack Apache families, I will respond. My people have the right to defend themselves. And if settlers trespass on Apache land, they will be warned once. After that... Akecheta shrugged eloquently. Morrison studied the Apache chief for a long moment. You're not what I expected, nor you, Colonel. Your niece has spoken of your honor. My niece seems to have developed strong feelings about yours. Morrison's voice carried a note of grudging respect mixed with paternal concern. What are your intentions toward her? The question hung in the desert air like smoke. Delphine felt her heart stop as she waited for Akecheta's answer. Since her revelation about the railroad survey, he'd kept his distance, the wounded trust evident in every line of his body. She belongs in your world, Akecheta said finally, though the words seemed to pain him. Not in mine. That's not your decision to make, Delphine said firmly. It's mine. And I choose carefully, Morrison interrupted. If you stay with him, you'll be dead to the civilized world. No going back, no second chances. And if you come with me, Akecheta added quietly, you'll be forever caught between worlds, trusted by neither, belonging to none. Delphine looked between the two men who'd shaped her understanding of courage and honor in such different ways. Her uncle, rigid with duty, but capable of mercy when reminded of his better nature. Akecheta, fierce with protective love for his people but yearning for something beyond endless war. I choose the path that leads to peace, she said finally, even if I have to walk it alone. 6 months later, Delphine stood on the porch of the small adobe house she'd built at the edge of Mesilla, where the Rio Grande carved its ancient path through the desert. Neither fully in the white settlements nor on Apache land, it sat in the borderland between worlds exactly where she belonged. Her general store had become an unlikely meeting ground. Apache women brought crafts to trade for supplies, while Mexican and Anglo settlers found goods they couldn't get elsewhere. More importantly, it had become a place where enemies slowly learned to see each other as human beings. The bell above her door chimed, and Delphine looked up from her ledger to see Akecheta filling the doorway. Her heart still leaped at the sight of him, though he'd kept his distance since their confrontation in the canyon. He came to trade sometimes, always formal, always careful not to be alone with her. Nalnish needs ammunition for hunting, he said without preamble, placing silver pieces on the counter. And Ayana requests needles for winter sewing, of course. Delphine gathered the items, acutely aware of his presence. How is everyone surviving? The winter was hard, but no harder than others. He paused, studying her face. You look thin. Are you eating properly? The concern in his voice made her chest tighten. I'm fine. Business is good, better than expected. Your uncle visits regularly. It wasn't a question. Morrison rode out twice a month, ostensibly to check on her safety, but really to marvel at what she'd accomplished. He'd begun bringing Apache children treats, though he'd never admit to enjoying their laughter. He's learning, Delphine said simply. We all are. Akecheta was quiet for a moment, then reached into his jacket and withdrew something wrapped in soft deer hide. Ayana sent this for you. Delphine unwrapped the bundle to find a necklace of turquoise and silver, worked with intricate patterns that spoke of hours of loving labor. Tears pricked her eyes as she recognized its significance among the Apache. Such a gift from a grandmother figure meant acceptance into the family. She says you've proven yourself worthy of Apache blood, Akecheta continued softly. That your courage in standing between the armies earned you a warrior's honor. And what do you say? The question escaped before Delphine could stop it. Akecheta's dark eyes met hers, and for a moment the careful distance dropped away. I say that I've been a fool. That pride and wounded trust have kept me from the greatest treasure the spirits ever offered. Delphine's hands trembled as she set the necklace aside. Akecheta, let me finish. He moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I've spent these months convincing myself that we come from worlds too different to bridge. But I've watched what you've built. Here, how you've brought enemies together through simple acts of respect and kindness. You've done what I thought impossible. What's that? You've shown that love is stronger than hate, that understanding can grow where only fear existed before. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his calloused hands. I love you, Delphine Ashworth. Not despite the differences between our worlds, but because you've proven those differences need not divide us. Are you certain? She whispered. Because I won't survive having my heart broken again. As certain as the sunrise, as sure as the desert wind. His thumb traced her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. Will you have me, Golden One? Will you be my wife and help me lead our people toward a better future? Our people? Apache Anglo, Mexican, anyone willing to choose peace over war, understanding over hatred. He smiled, and she saw in his eyes the dream of something unprecedented, a true joining of worlds through love and respect rather than conquest. Your uncle has agreed to mediate a formal treaty. The territorial governor is interested in your model for peaceful coexistence. Delphine felt hope bloom in her chest like desert flowers after rain. You mean it? Real peace? As real as this. He kissed her then, soft and sure, sealing a promise that would echo through generations. When they parted, both were breathing hard, years of separation and longing condensed into that single perfect moment. Yes, Delphine whispered against his lips. Yes to all of it. Yes to you, yes to us, yes to the world we'll build together. As the sun set over the Rio Grande, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Delphine and Akecheta stood together in the doorway of her little store. Tomorrow would bring challenges skeptics on both sides who preferred the familiar. Hatred to uncertain peace. But tonight, love had conquered fear, and two hearts that had found each other against impossible odds were finally, truly homed out in the distance. A golden eagle soared over the desert, its cry echoing across the twilight. A wild, free sound that spoke of new beginnings and endless possibility.